How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Trench Talk. Here to recap the Monday Night Football slate and talk more about some Sunday NFL football that we previewed last week. I'm your host, as always, Logan Shanks, and my co host, Christian Royston. Had another second straight doubleheader yesterday of Monday Night Football. It's kind of mixed thoughts about that, whether people like it, whether people don't. Me personally, I kind of like it because if it's anything like or it's the same as last week where we had one kind of terrible game and then the other one was actually pretty good. So the first one, obviously, I was referencing was Titans Dolphins. Christian, I guess kind of just your opening thoughts on just a really sloppy game of football, in my opinion.
If we just had the Titans Dolphins game, I would have been upset. I would have gone right to bed at
Mhm.
7 p.m.
Yeah,
That was just
I
not a good game.
I do, even before the season, I guess I don't really understand why this is a Monday night game because yes, last year the Titans had a big comeback in Miami and beat them. That was like a one of Will Levis's like only great games last year. Like he had like two or three of those and helped do like a major comeback. But then we're gonna have that as the Monday night game. We think that Will Levis is gonna be so good that he's gonna beat Tua. Now this is before the season starts. Now obviously both of those quarterbacks might be out for some time.
I haven't really heard anything on Will Levis. I know it
Mm-hmm.
was his shoulder he hurt, but
Yeah.
yeah, Tua's on IR. They bring in Tyler Huntley, who has like a week, maybe a week and a half to learn the system, and clearly that was not enough time at all.
Mm-hmm.
And Mason Rudolph versus Tyler Huntley on primetime football, that's really kind of, I think we got what we expected.
And Will Levis gets hurt. So on the first drive of the game, I'm actually, I'm watching it because, I'm getting off of work, football starting, might as well give me some, give me something to watch before the actual Monday night football game starts, which was Lions Seahawks, which we'll get to. But the Titans, they start driving, they look all right, and then Will Levis throws a pick to a defense. I want to say it was a defensive lineman that was in coverage on DeAndre Hopkins. And for any of the good lip readers out there, camera shows him on the sidelines and he's like, I just didn't even see him, man, which kind of hard to believe because he was just kind of sitting right there. And then on the next drive for the Titans, he's full extension, diving out for a first down and lands right on his shoulder. You can see him visibly in pain right after, and he did not go back in the game after that. Mason Rudolph took over and won them the game, I guess, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, I feel like this was more of a game that the Dolphins just lost
Yeah.
because the Titans didn't look good. They they scored with Tony Pollard in garbage time, and they just could have ran the clock out, kicked a
Hmm.
field goal. Didn't really matter. But yeah, they pick up a safety because Tyler Huntley throws the ball away in the end zone. Cool. And the Dolphins just could not move the ball. Huntley was missing wide open Tyreek Hill quite a bit. They just weren't using A chain at all. It's just like, yeah, they just didn't seem like they knew what to do. Doesn't seem like they know what to do without Tua.
Yeah, and I mean on the Titans front, real quick, Mason Rudolph finishes 9 for 17 for 85 yards. Tony Pollard and, like you said, Tajay Spears both run in a rush in a touchdown. They finished with kind of a solid 142 rushing yards. Outside of that, you don't really know where this team's going to go. Not only do you not know Will Levis's status, but do you even want him to play right now? Because he's not been looking great. And then if your backup's going to be Mason Rudolph, it didn't really even look like they trusted him to do anything with the offense against the Dolphins secondary, which is personally not really that good.
Yeah, I think if I'm the Titans, I do stick with Levis just
Mm-hmm.
because outside of like one bad play a game, which he seems to have every single week, he actually plays pretty well. And I mean, if the defense can just keep the game winnable for him and he can do more good than bad, then
Mm-hmm.
they should start winning games. But
I was
so
really
far,
I was really trying to find the words for this because I was gonna make a tweet after he throws that interception and then dives out. I was trying to think of a tweet that's like, Will Levis plays like me when I'm playing Madden, and I know that I can just turn the game off whenever I want. If I throw an interception or I fumble the ball or something, like he almost plays like he doesn't understand. Like the worst possibility is not in his mind, or it is, and he just doesn't care.
Yeah, I mean, he's like a gunslinger, you
Yeah,
know?
he lands. So on that dive, he lands right on his shoulder, and yeah, like I said, he's obviously he's wincing. They kind of got a good screenshot of that where it gives us another great Will Levis screen cap, which kind of feel bad for him because I that one is him obviously visibly in pain and also probably learning that he's not going to play the rest of the game. Um, but other than that, I mean, I won $10 from Christian because I was talking up the Titans defense, and Christian thought that Snoop Huntley was going to come in and dice up the Titans defense, which has honestly been playing well all year, and the Dolphins could not do anything.
Yeah, I'm in the boat where it's not necessarily the Titans defense played well because I don't think they did. I mean, they haven't really played well all year. It's just, the Dolphins offense was just not able to do anything. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's mostly just because of inexperience from Tyler Huntley because I mean, he hadn't been on a team yet. You have to fly him into Miami and learn a pretty specific offense that, I mean, we talked about it. It's kind of designed for Tua.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, Tyler Huntley's not Tua.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to, this is where we bring up probably like it's my first worst performance of the week, and I'm gonna give it to Mike McDaniel. Not because he's not able to perform not because of how Tyler Huntley performed really. It's mainly because of how he is almost unable. We've been shown time and time again how he is unable to adapt his offense to someone that is not Tua. Anytime that a new guy's been brought in, whether it's Skylar Thompson or Mike White or Snoop Huntley, it just doesn't look like they just don't look good with the playmakers that they have. I was telling Christian this last night. The off and Dan Orlovsky made a great point on over the broadcast last night and said that there's probably only 5 quarterbacks in the league that could run the offense the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah, because you said, I mean, I think there was questions when Tyreek was coming in, and then the addition of like Jalen Waddle of like if Tua can actually has the arm to run an offense like that, and I think he has the perfect arm to the point of like he can't throw it too deep, but he can get the ball to certain points in the field. So if you just tell him throw the ball as far as you can, he's going to float one enough where Tyreek or Jalen Waddle can get there. Because if you look at a lot of plays, I mean, he just throws the ball up, and then Tyreek he might be on a go route, and he'll be like, okay, I got to come in here and then move over here to get to this ball. And he's kind of the only receiver that can do that.
Yeah, and I mean, Tua's just been, honestly, since Mike McDaniel's been there, I'll give him credit for that. He's been one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the league. And I was telling you last night that he has probably one of the most accurate deep balls because of his receivers as well. But when you have guys like Skylar Thompson, who I was thinking, does he have the arm? Not really. Is he accurate? Not really. Tyler Huntley, I think he's accurate for the most part, but does he have the big arm? Not really.
He almost has too much of an arm.
He can't just it's not to their faults at all. It's just no one can run that offense like Tua can. And it just honestly seemed like Mike McDaniel didn't game plan to incorporate, his best weapons with Tua out.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you saw the overthrow from Tyler Huntley where he just chucks the ball down and it's too far. I mean, Tyreek can usually get to those, but I mean, it's just like he doesn't have the deep ball accuracy. I mean, just because you don't really know what you're throwing to. I mean,
Hmm.
I assume Tyler Huntley's never thrown to somebody as fast as Tyreek.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things of like, I think Tua has such a good connection with his receivers that, I mean, they've run through these game plans all the time. I doubt they're giving like those long ball reps in practice to like Skylar Thompson.
And I was telling you last night that when you can't open up the passing game, even if it's because they mainly rely obviously on the long ball connections, when you can't open it up like that, then you can't rely on the run game, which is what they've been able to do with Tua. It's because, like, okay, defenses have to adjust. They don't want to get beaten over the top. Now they have to, send more guys in the secondary. All right, well, that's where guys like Achan, Jeff Wilson, any other running back that's been in that system can eat up yards and be really productive. That was not the case last night. I need to look up their total rushing yard. They finished with 106 on the night. Tyreek Hill was the leading, or Tyler Huntley was the leading rusher with 8 carries for 40 yards.
Mhm.
And, guys like Achan, even Tyreek Hill got 3 carries in there. Jalen Wright, I mean, they're just not able to be productive and get anything going for most of the game.
And I think we're kind of seeing how much they miss Raheem Mostert because they don't have
Mm-hmm.
that like 3 down back. Like Devon Achane can't be your workhorse back. I mean, he's
Mm-hmm.
a receiving back, and they only connected on 3 passes to him. I mean, he should be in check downs. He shouldn't be taking like direct direct
Mm-hmm.
handoffs. And I mean, it seems like maybe the Dolphins are just a little bit too bruised up to
Mm-hmm.
actually run their game plan. And I think it's forcing Mike McDaniel to become like a good coach, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I
Um,
love Mike McDaniel, but I mean, it's pretty easy to game plan when you have so much talent on the team. So
mhm.
he's going to be forced to be creative without the talent.
Yeah, so I mean to kind of wrap up that game, just not really you don't it's a win for the Titans, but you don't really know how far they can go. Even with Will Levis, there's still some questions. And then now I think honestly the Dolphins are at risk of being maybe one of the worst teams in the league without Tua if they can't adjust.
Yeah, because I mean, I'll check their schedule, but I assume the path does not get easier.
I mean, when you have to go up against soon, they're going to have to go up against Josh Allen again, and then Aaron
Mm-hmm.
Rodgers. You probably get some. Probably going to be honestly some close games with the Patriots if Tua's still not back.
Yeah, and they play the Patriots next week,
Mm-hmm.
or I guess this weekend. And then after the bye week, they should have Tua back. And that's
Maybe,
kind of when the schedule starts heating up. Colts, Cardinals, Bills.
yeah. So it's definitely going to be tricky for them. I just don't really know where they can go at this point.
I mean, yeah. I mean, at this point, I think they're fine just waiting until Tua gets back. I mean, I know people have been questioning whether or not he should just retire right away. I don't think he wants to do that. I mean, he's seeing what the team is like without him. And, I mean, yeah, I would be surprised if Tua isn't back by the end of this month.
If they beat the Patriots, you move to 2-3. You just got to give the team some hope for if and when Tua comes back.
Yeah.
So, but the other Monday night game, obviously, a lot more entertaining. I definitely tuned into this one a little bit more, and it
Yeah.
was even closer at some points. That was Lions Seahawks, a game. These two teams have gone at it the last couple years. It's been a shootout. It almost looked like it was going to be, but then Lions kind of just pulled away late, kept going up by 2 scores, and they end up winning. Let me look at their total there. I believe it was 42 to 29. 42-29.
Mhm.
Jared Goff obviously leads the way with the funny story. He had more receiving touchdowns than he did incompletions in this game.
Yeah. Plus, he went perfect 18 for 18 and
Mm-hmm.
didn't get the game ball.
And he didn't, and despite being 18 for 18 with 2 touchdowns, did not have a perfect passer rating.
Yeah. Although, I think it's something about the touchdowns or the yards per attempt. I mean, it's like he was technically perfect, but I think not explosive enough to have that perfect passer rating.
I mean, I get it, but
It's something with the way they
yeah,
calculate it.
292 yards though. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, this was a game though that throughout it was honestly fairly close because I think in the fourth there was a lot of hope that the Seahawks were going to come back and get this win, but in the end, Lions stay through almost on top of the North, battling the Vikings at this point.
yeah, I think it's probably going to be really. I mean, I think we keep getting proven every week that it's going to be an entertaining division to watch, especially with the Vikings still doing really well. Packers get Jordan Love back, which we'll talk about that later. But Lions, after kind of, they, I guess last week they beat the Cardinals, but the week before you kind of want a little bit more from them when they're playing the Bucks. But this week, I think they kind of just proved that, hey, we're still here. They gave up 29 points to the Seahawks, but I mean, when Jared Goff's
Undefeated
balling,
team.
what?
It was an undefeated team though. So
Yeah, it was an undefeated team. Maybe you still have some question marks on the defense, but overall, they came up when they needed to. Honestly, especially late in that game when the Seahawks were pushing it, I was pretty impressed from both sides and just a great game overall. I think we need to just be expecting that whenever they play each other now.
yeah, I think the defense. If you look at it kind of like in a vacuum, I love my vacuums. Uh, they played pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
Aiden Hutchinson, I think, has really made a case for Defensive Player of the Year. Although I don't think he got any sacks, he was all over Geno. I think this was just a game that showed that the Seahawks are honestly better than we think, because Geno Smith is doing a good job controlling that offense. I mean, they asked him to throw the ball 56 times, and he actually did pretty solid. I mean, the pick at the end is like kind of like a last-ditch effort. I mean, you're down by 2 scores. He's like, well, I need to get a touchdown here, and then we need to get an onside kick. And it's
Right.
like the pick was whatever, but almost 400 yards in the air.
Yeah. Led by DK Metcalf,
who was making Carlton Davis his child.
Yeah, even though there was a couple times Carlton Davis got the better end of him, but it's okay.
I think the big thing about the defense is the penalties on the defensive backs. I don't know if you saw that. There was probably like 5 or 6 pass interferences.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
Between like Teron Armstead and Carlton Davis, where those are huge yardage penalties. And I mean, the Lions did a good job blocking them down most of the game, but with those, they're kind of just letting them back into it. That's kind of how Kenneth Walker got his 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean, Seahawks, the Lions led 21. I forget, Lions led 21 to 7.5, and then the Seahawks scored 13 and 9 in the third and fourth quarter. So they were pushing it for sure. And if the Lions couldn't keep it up offensively, we probably see a Seahawks win here, honestly. But I'm still just so surprised about how the Lions are still able to get so much production out of both Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery.
I mean, David Montgomery, I don't know if you saw his.
Oh, yeah.
I assume you saw his run. I think everybody's seen his run. Puts a dude in the dirt and then somehow runs for another like 15 yards. I mean, he is powerful. And you add that with, Jahmyr Gibbs didn't even need to take a receiving snap. They almost flip-flopped their roles where you had David Montgomery drawing up more passing, like running more routes.
Yeah, and he only had that one catch for 40 yards, but like still it's honestly just surprising because I even just had to look. David Montgomery, I think he's in his prime right now, and it's kind of weird to say because it feels like he's been in the league forever. He's only 27. So just turned 27 in June. So it's honestly weird to think about how he's coming into his prime. Obviously coming out of Iowa State, had some pretty decent years with the Bears, but now finishes 12 carries, 40 yards, and a touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs, 14 carries, 78 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, when the Lions offense looks like this, they're honestly unstoppable.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of what we're going to expect from the Lions going forward.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they just have such dynamic players.
I agree. I mean, not too much I have left for this one. Great performance by Jared Goff. I was honestly really surprised, but Lions, I think, get a honestly pretty much needed win. I know any game you could say is much needed at this point, but it's probably their best win of the season so far, sitting at 3-1, and then they have a week off and they get to play the Cowboys, and then we'll get into division play with a game against the Vikings, which I think is probably going to be one of the better matchups that we have seen from these two teams in a year or two. So
yeah, that could be the start of what could be the battle for the North.
I agree. As per usual, obviously we have our best and worst performances, but we don't really have any other games just like in order that we want to talk about. So we could go, I guess, really in whatever way you want to go, my guy.
I think the biggest talk of the town has got to be Derrick Henry this week, right? I mean, he is currently tied for the most 200-yard rushing games, and he put up 199 this week. 1 yard off of history.
I know. Yeah, he really tore apart that Bills defense that had been playing pretty solid for the most part this season. But it also doesn't help when that Ravens defense probably has their best performance of the year against the Bills.
I mean, that Ravens defense is really good. You saw kind of all their key players step up. I think
even guys like Kyle Van Noy.
Yeah, Kyle Van Noy came up huge. I think Kyle Hamilton played a really good game. I mean, even Roquan Smith was in the middle there a lot. I mean, the Bills just couldn't get anything going on the ground.
No. I honestly turned that game off after the third quarter because, at halftime I thought maybe they could come back, just maybe. They were down 21-3. I was thinking, if the Bills get something going here, I think they got the ball to start the second half. They did, and they just could never get anything going. They score a touchdown with Ty Johnson in the third quarter, but outside of that, Ravens dominated. They just dominated offensively. Their defense came to play, and I think that's probably the best. That too with the Ravens. That's their best win of the season so far.
I think that's what we're gonna see from the Ravens at their peak. If they can play like this every week, they'll probably win a Super Bowl.
And Lamar had a great game as well behind Derrick Henry.
Yeah, not too bad in the air, 2 passing touchdowns.
And
I mean,
but when Derrick Henry's running
54 yards.
Yeah, and when Derrick Henry's running for almost 200 yards, you don't really need to pass it more than what he pass it. I think it was 13 for 18, I want to say.
Yep.
13
for 18. I think, you see the addition of Justice Hill back there, a little bit of a switch up from Derrick Henry where you have a guy that can catch balls too. I mean, this offense is dynamic. They actually put it together this week, and I think the Bills maybe just need to do a little bit more because Josh Allen didn't turn the ball over.
He had the one fumble, but that kind of a broken play, and they're already down by 2-3 scores. So
yeah, but in the air, he didn't turn the ball over, but he didn't really have any explosive plays.
He was kind of getting some drops too from his receivers as well.
His receivers were kind of problematic. You just see him on the bench and you just be like, don't know what I could have done. I put that right in his hands. I put that in his chest. I hand delivered that to the receiver, and he returned to sender. Come on.
Yeah. And another thing with the Ravens as well, I completely forgot about this until I was listening to a podcast. They have their other running back who they had last year, Keaton Mitchell, who's on injured reserve right now, or he's on the PUP list, excuse me. When he gets back in that offense, that running game is going to be even better. This is the guy that was averaging 8 yards per carry last season with the Ravens. So I'm excited for when he comes back as well. But
Yeah.
I heard a lot of people also saying, it almost feels like the Ravens can beat anyone. Like they're designed to beat anyone. They can game plan to beat anyone except for the Chiefs.
Yeah, and I think we could see that
Mm-hmm.
again. I mean, I think it'll just come down to if Lamar Jackson can perform in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. And last thing for me here on Josh Allen and the Bills, I think if you're a Bills fan, don't get too discouraged about this. That's a good
Mhm.
Ravens team. Sunday Night Football in Baltimore. It's early in the season. You kind of like you were on a hot streak, Buffalo. You kind of just got pimp slapped, and now you just got to rebound from it. And I think they can. They play the Texans this week. If they get a win there, that's huge, which I think is a very winnable game considering how the Texans have been playing recently.
That could be a battle of whichever quarterback goes off more, and I think
Mm-hmm.
Josh Allen is a little bit more primed to break out than CJ Stroud at this point.
Oh,
I mean, Stroud's good, but he's not Josh Allen good.
yeah. That's all I wanted to hit for that game. If we want to talk about, I guess, move to that CJ Stroud and in the Texans game.
Yeah, I mean, Trevor Lawrence. What are we doing here? 0-4.
People are, still talking about the bust throwing that around. I couldn't pick just one person, one group, one coach to be on my worst performances. So I just straight up put the Jaguars because that is a game where it was very winnable for them. They
Mm-hmm.
they hold CJ Stroud and the Texans to, uh, you know, they they were down. The Jaguars were down 13-17 going into half. Then the Jags scored a touchdown in the third quarter, and they had shut them. They had shut the Texans out for most of the second half, and then they give up that final touchdown late. And he had just you got to think it's a lot of problems. It's mostly coaching. I want to say. I mean, you can't coach your guys to. I mean, you just even if you held them to a field goal, you go into overtime, give yourself a chance. You cannot give up that long drive, and it just doesn't. It just feels discouraging now. Like they're starting 0-4 now. I think if they would have started 1-3, kind of like the Titans, maybe just maybe they can build up some momentum. I don't know about that anymore.
Yeah, at this point, the playoffs are kind of out of the question, and they
Mm-hmm.
just need to figure out what the issue is with their team. I think they're on the cusp of being good. It's almost like reminds me a lot of the Vikings. Was that last year or the year before? Where I think it was last year where they started winless,
Yes.
but it's like all their losses were like, oh, if one play had flipped here, if we had hit this field goal, if we had,
Mm-hmm.
you know, held them to 3 points on this drive. I mean, they had like a positive point differential and they were
Mm-hmm.
winless or something.
Right. Yeah.
And that just feels like what's happening with the Jags. I mean, they're like really close to these wins.
Mm-hmm.
Trevor Lawrence is not the problem. He's playing decent.
Mm-hmm.
It's just they just can't get over the hump.
Yeah, their losses outside of the Bills one where they got blown out, they've lost by 3 points, 5 points, and 4 points.
Yeah, I mean, those are losses that you can easily flip the other way.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like reminds me of the Cyclones.
Yeah, from 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, I think I was kind of thinking about last week, kind of giving a lot of shade to Trevor Lawrence. I'll have to watch that game again, this week's game again, but I don't really think he played that bad, honestly. For the most part, the offense was moving pretty well, I want to say, but and this doesn't not to discredit this the Texans because they came together after they lost to who they lose to last week.
The
The Vikings.
Vikings.
After they lost to the Vikings, they came together. They got up for this game late, and you got to give credit to them. Um, because obviously 2-2 looks a lot worse than 3-1 at this point. So great win for the Titans, or not Titans. Great win for the Texans. But honestly, the Jaguars, that might have been your best chance on the road in Houston to get a win. And now I don't. It honestly makes me question how they're going to fare against like the Titans and the Colts.
I think they should do well against those teams. It's Texans are good. I think playing close to the Texans is a good sign. Um, the Texans also are without Joe Mixon still, so once they get him back, they might be even better. But I mean, you look at C.J. Stroud. I mean, he throws for almost 350, 2 touchdowns, no picks. I mean, it's kind of a game decided by quarterbacks, and I think Trevor Lawrence just wasn't as good as C.J. Stroud, and I think that's the big difference.
Oh, believe me, I know that Joe Mixon's out. My fantasy team, both of them know he is not playing. But I got wins in both my leagues now, despite being out. Joe Mixon again for a second week.
Yeah, we don't talk about fantasy.
Did you lose this week? I didn't even look at your team.
I lost because I played against Derrick Henry, and
there you go. Well, that will
do
Rice
got injured before he put up a point.
Well,
the best team in the league is now 1-3. It's tough.
Oh yeah, that's what they always say. But
fantasy gods, just is what it is.
Thanks to my awesome team, I scored 148 points this week. So look at that.
Yep. Even the bottom feeders can score.
Whatever. I think we play soon, but regardless of that, yeah, just Jaguars. Like you said, I think the playoffs have to be out of contention for them.
No, they just have to figure out what's going to work and then play for next year. Get ready for the draft. Figure out their free agents. I mean,
maybe fire your coach.
Yeah, get a system going that's actually going to work.
You know, you actually had one of your best performances of this week from this game.
Yeah, Nico Collins. It's I don't know if anybody's heard of that name. The wide receiver 2 is what I've been told on the Texans. Yeah, I think Nico Collins at this point, he's cemented himself as the wide receiver 1 on that team, despite Stephon Diggs coming to town
and Tank Dell still being there.
Yeah, Nico Collins is like that guy. Yeah. He put up 150 more receiving yards, 12 catches, touchdown, and now he's at the top of the receivers. I mean, he has the most receiving yards in the league.
He's leading the league in receiving yards, is second in receptions with 30, and with 2 touchdowns. So,
yeah, I mean, he's the best receiver in the league currently. Some can make that argument. And
statistically, yes.
Yeah, and I think it's you just got to give him his bread, give him his due.
Where do we want to?
All I had on that game. Poor Jags.
Yeah, where do we want to move from there now? We could stay in the AFC South for the Titans.
The Titans?
Not the Titans.
The Colts.
God damn it, the Colts.
Well, Levis has just been on his mind.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, Mayo Man. I don't know what it is.
Honestly, a pretty good game between the Colts and the Steelers.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. I was telling you, I honestly wanted Justin Fields to have that game-winning drive at the end, just because I'm a fan for guys that are just kind of getting their second chance. He gets kind of outcasted by the Bears. He's having a solid year with the Steelers. He was already having a really solid game already. Finished throwing for over 300 yards and scored 2 touchdowns as well. So, yeah, I mean, but it unfortunately wasn't enough because the Couch Slayer was back in this game.
My goat, Joe Flacco, who's on my best performances, but I also have Justin Fields on my honorable mentions because
Hmm.
I feel like they both played great games. I mean, you could look at the stats and say Joe Flacco wasn't as productive. I mean, Justin Fields had 3 total touchdowns. I mean, I feel like he's proven himself as the clear starter in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, for sure. I think because in a lot of these games so far, I think I said it last week, and I'll say it again, especially with this one. Even though the Steelers lost this game, I don't think they're in it with with Ryan or Russell Wilson behind center.
No. Um, but Joe Flacco is just too good.
He really is. Anthony Richardson gets kind of knocks himself out really of this game. He was having a solid game so far, or solid start.
Mm-hmm.
And he slides. Looks like he's sliding. He just kind of gets an awkward hit or lands awkwardly on his hip. Looks like he's going to be dealing with a hip issue. And I don't, I haven't really heard the severity on it, but
I think he's fine. They said that he could have come back into that game if he wanted to.
so honest it, but
He'll be back.
there's
He'll be back next week. But I mean, it paved the way for Joe Flacco to come in, throw 2 touchdowns, almost 170 yards. I mean, he won that game. And
yeah,
Michael Pittman popped off.
finally. I've been waiting. That's my boy.
Yeah, I mean, it was bound to happen. I
They
mean,
just don't
Josh
use
Downs almost had a better game too. I mean, it's kind of crazy to see. I mean, the passing game worked.
Mm-hmm.
You pair that with Jonathan Taylor. I mean, I feel bad for Justin Fields. That's a tough team to come over. That's pretty much the same situation that the Jags had against the Texans.
Yeah, and with the Colts, like that's one of those teams I still think they can be a solid team. They're sitting at 2-2 right now. I think all the teams, even my Cowboys, sitting at 2-2. You got to go from here. You're at an even playing field pretty much. You got to rack up some wins now.
Mm-hmm.
The bar is low for pretty much all the 2-2 teams. It's only been 4 weeks, obviously, but I think the Colts could still put together a solid season. Now that the Jags are kind of imploding and the Titans are unimpressive, maybe compete for that AFC South spot. Maybe.
Yeah, I think we saw what the Colts can do if they don't turn the ball over.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Anthony Richardson is a great quarterback, but I think he has quite a few accuracy issues, and I think that kind of hurts them. But you see them play a pretty decent, nearly perfect game, and they take down an undefeated Steelers team.
Yep. And now I'm even with how the Steelers kept answering in this one until really the final drive, and that makes me even more scared for when my Cowboys have to play them next week on Sunday Night Football in Pittsburgh too. We cannot lose to Justin Fields. We cannot lose to Justin. Love Justin Fields. We can't lose to him. Anyways,
I think he could be an issue.
Could be, but that's knocking out 2 of your best performances there. Honestly, a great game. I obviously tuned in for the latter part of that, and Christian actually missed one of his best performances for that Lions game with Aiden Hutchinson, who is still making his case for that Defensive Player of the Year early on in this season.
Yeah, we'll talk about the other candidates. I mean, at this point, I feel like there's a few people you can bring to mind. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson leading in sacks, and although he didn't, did we figure out if he got a sack in that game? I don't think he did.
I can double check.
He was all over the field. I saw him. I mean, got quite a few quarterback hits. His spin move is so deadly. I mean, he can also throw linemen. He threw a lineman into Geno Smith. I mean, he's just the most dominant edge rusher this year. I don't think TJ Watt is going to be in the conversation. I don't think he should be. Still doing great things, but I think there's a new field of guys we can choose from.
No
Myles
sack.
Garrett also had How many?
No sacks, but 3 quarterback hits last night for Aiden
Mm-hmm.
Hutchinson.
Yeah. I mean, Myles Garrett at this point, I think, is probably not going to get a look at the Defense Player of the Year again. But you know who is? Fred Warner, who, I mean, we talked about this. He's not He's not like on pace to have a great year tackling like he has been.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, he's sitting in the mid 60s of like players with the most tackles. But what he's doing outside of that is something that no other player is doing. I
Right.
mean, he has 3 forced fumbles and 2 picks, including the pick 6 he got against the Patriots,
Mm-hmm.
which is leading the league. And he's leading the league in, I assume, turnovers. He has the most forced fumbles, and he has the 3rd most interceptions.
What'd you say? 3 forced fumbles and 2. I think he is. Yeah. Even though Xavier McKinney
He has
uh,
4
has
picks.
4 picks with 1 in every game, which is insane.
Mm-hmm.
So he's in that race too. Honestly, we should mention him.
Yeah. Although it's tough.
Even if it's just a pick race.
Yeah. Although I think we saw. I don't think they value straight picks as much as just overall influence on the defense, just because we saw what happened to Trayvon Diggs.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, man had 11 interceptions. Even like Deron Bland last year, who had as many pick sixes as he did, I want to say it was 4 or 5. Still didn't win it, but I get it. It's fine. Who was the last corner was Stephon Gilmore, right?
Yep. Although it wasn't just his picks. I think he.
No, yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think he also had probably close to like 20 pass block or pass breakups too.
Yeah.
That year. But regardless.
Now, Cowboys fans want to see one of their players at least get defensive player.
I think those guys have all been playing really great. It's fun to see how that race is going to go. It's honestly kind of looking like, and a little bit off topic here, but I saw TikTok about it. This might be the best Heisman race that we've had in a while, and was referencing it back to, remember that 30 for 30 we watched on the 1997 Heisman race.
Yeah.
I think it's very similar. I think it's very similar to this year, because I think every year or every week people's Heisman boards are kind of changing. But
although I've had the same guy on mine throughout the year, that kid from Boise State.
Oh yeah, all year. Yeah, you totally had him coming in.
Yeah. I had him before the season. I had him before he was born. I said this kid's gonna be good.
By the way, that year,
LeBron James be like.
Stephon Gilmore had 6 picks, 2 pick sixes, and 20 pass breakups.
Yeah,
that's D-boy.
Yeah,
but to move over to, well, he's on the Vikings, right? Stephon Gilmore, he's on the Vikings.
He is,
and they played the Packers, who I'm going to give one of my worst performances, maybe just even a worse. It's more of just a worse decision, to Matt LaFleur, who decided to start Jordan Love, who, yes, played well down the stretch, but honestly was most of the reason that the Packers dug themselves a hole and end up losing that game, and don't have enough in the gas tank to come back against the Vikings, who are 4-0 now.
Well, I think if they played Malik Willis, they would have had 0 chance.
We don't know that.
Yeah, we do.
Well, I can just
go look. It's the best defense in the league.
I bet every one of those Jordan Love interceptions led to touchdowns.
But again, that is the best defense in the league currently. And
it is.
Jordan Love also put up 400 yards and 4 touchdowns on it. I don't think Malik Willis is doing that. And also,
two of Jordan Love's 3 interceptions were led to touchdown drives. Also, it didn't help that the Packers missed 2 field goals, I want to say.
Yes.
Yep. Both their field goal attempts, they missed that. But Jordan Love does finish with 4 touchdowns. I'm still going to say Matt LaFleur, though, I said it in our group chat. He just doesn't look healthy. I don't know if he should be out there. You might even be risking with how good that defense is that he's going to get hurt again, which I thought was going to happen. But yeah, personally, not the decision I would have made. It feels like you're kind of rushing him to get back, and I get it. You want to win. You know, it's a divisional game. You're at home. You don't want to fall behind in the division standings and just drop another game in general. But I think you just don't want to risk the health of your quarterback that you just paid a bunch of money to, who ends up throwing 3 picks and kind of starts to dig that hole for you.
I think you're looking too much at the first half. Like there were 2 halves of that game, and I think this game had pretty huge implications because these are two. It's a 3-0 Vikings versus a 2-1 Packers. If they get that win at home, the Packers are the leader of the NFC North.
I agree, but
Both 3-1, and they get the tiebreaker.
maybe I am looking too much at it, but also, well, if you want me to just look at so Packers, they fall behind 28-7.
28-0.
28-0. Going into halftime, they're down 28-7. Mm-hmm. Even if we just look at the second half, they only scored 22 points. I mean, it just in that comes in the fourth quarter. I know, I get it, but
and he throws. I mean, he looked like an MVP player for that second half.
Didn't get the win.
Yeah, well, I think if they had started anybody else, this game would have been a blowout, probably 35-10. That's what I'm saying. Jordan Love was doing stuff that you aren't going to see.
So they lose regardless.
They do, just because I think the Vikings at this point have proven themselves as one of, if not the best team in the NFL.
I just think, I mean, yeah, you give yourself more of a chance with Jordan Love. I get that, but
they almost won that. I mean, they were right there.
I agree. I just don't want to risk. I don't want them to risk the health of Jordan Love, especially when he comes out there and plays the way he does in the first half.
Yeah, I think though at some point you can't just be safe with your quarterbacks. I mean, if your quarterback says, "Hey, I'm good to go," throw me out there, and he's healthy enough to throw 54 times, I think he was definitely good to go. And then, I mean, now they have him going forward. He can build off that performance. I mean, that's going to stick in his mind. And now he's going to, I would say, probably throw 0 picks in his next game.
Vikings will play the Jets this Sunday for the London game. Get up early for that. And then the Packers will they probably have a win lined up for them. They'll travel to Los Angeles and play the Rams this Sunday. So
yeah, although there's no telling what the Rams are going to do. One week they're looking really good and they have a comeback win over the 49ers. The next week they just get bodied by the Bears.
I mean, it's just another case scenario where I'm just looking at it and I feel bad for Matt Stafford, who has to rely on guys like Tutu Atwell, Jordan Washington, Demarcus Robinson, Colby Parkinson, Kyron Williams, and Tyler Johnson to win him games, and for them to outdo a really good Bears defense. Who I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on this game, but yeah, Bears look solid. They get that win. Still, do you think NFC North could be maybe the most competitive division?
Yeah. Although I don't think the Bears are adding to the competitiveness. I think you'll see them get some of these random wins, but I think when they revert to who they actually are, until Caleb Williams can actually figure out how to play football at the next level, they're not going to be able to compete with like the Vikings or the Lions or the Packers.
Yeah, I mean, especially on the road, like Lambeau Field, U.S. Bank, they're going to swallow Ford Field. They're going to swallow them up there.
I mean, that's just almost a given. Unless, I mean, we're I was promised Patrick Mahomes 2.0, so until he shows me that he's Patrick Mahomes 2.0, I don't see them being competitive.
Yeah, well, I can get a quick hit on an honorable mention for my worst performances, which is Patrick Mahomes, who takes out his best receiver. Just, I mean,
Oh,
but they still get the win, so it doesn't matter.
oh, it matters.
Well, yes, it does matter, but in terms of he knocks out his own receiver and they still get the win
Going
somehow.
into the season, I said that Rashee Rice was going to be a top 3 receiver this year. Everybody laughed. They pointed. They laughed at me. And then what did he do? He became a top 3 receiver. And Mahomes said, nope, I don't want people thinking I have a top 3 receiver on my team. This is why we got rid of Tyreek Hill. I'll get rid of Rashee Rice myself.
Yeah, it's all me. We're doing this because of me. We're winning because of me. He's just
Great
selfish.
tackle by Patrick Mahomes. I mean,
On an even worse interception.
Yeah.
I mean, his I like Patrick Mahomes. I like how Patrick Mahomes plays. I do think he's the best quarterback in the league still, regardless. But man, he's got to stop with these interceptions that just look like he's playing backyard football and just
He's just kind of doing too much now. I mean, I think we're expecting him to do too much, and he is doing too much.
I would agree, but the Chargers just honestly, it didn't even look like they. I mean, I think it's just another great performance by the Chiefs defense. You could put the Chiefs defense on your best performance every week because honestly, I do think they might be the best and the most valued defense in this league with how many wins. I mean, I think they're the reason that they're undefeated, honestly. It's not the offense. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, and people forget that there were quite a few years that Tom Brady played bad, but they were still winning the division, and they were still starting the years undefeated.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same story. I mean, great players will have down years. That's just, you can't be perfect all the time. That's just not possible.
I mean, Tom Brady on the defense, the other side of the ball, they had guys like Mike Vrabel, Ty Law. Get into even later years, you have Stephon Gilmore, the McCourty twins, and just great defensive minds. Steve Spagnuolo, probably the best defensive mind in the game right now.
Yeah, and I think if you want a dynasty to work, you have to have great defenses when your offense can't keep up. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what we're seeing, and they're still undefeated.
Yeah. I'm going to look at their schedule, but we were talking yesterday. There's a lot of people saying, do they pick up a receiver? They showed that they weren't afraid to pick up a running back when Isaiah Pacheco went down. They go out and sign Kareem Hunt off the streets, who actually had a really solid performance after Carson Steele was benched pretty much.
I mean, I don't know. I've been seeing this meme tossed around. Patrick Mahomes needs a receiver. Tyreek Hill needs a quarterback. I don't think I've been seeing. You remember that episode of SpongeBob, where SpongeBob has to work for the chum bucket or whatever, and the ghost of him and Mr. Krabs are reaching out. That's like Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes.
I don't think it would ever happen. Chiefs host the Saints, by the way, this Monday night.
With the way the Saints have been playing,
without their weapons, I think the Chiefs still probably come out and win this game. They start 5-0. I think that's obviously a very hard environment, Arrowhead, but I think the Saints might make this one interesting with the Chiefs being down as many weapons as they are.
I think the Saints at this point are in fraud watch. We had two of the best games we've seen all season from a team, from them, if that makes sense. And then they now drop their second straight game.
Mm-hmm.
To the Falcons of all teams.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw, but as someone pointed out, actually, Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr pretty much had an identical game.
Oh my gosh.
Kirk Cousins, 21 for 35, 238 yards and a pick. Derek Carr, 28 for 36, 239 yards and a pick.
Jeez, he really needed those 7 extra completions to get that yard, huh?
Um,
Although 7 passes for a yard is more than Bo Nix did this year.
that's true. We're
This
getting
week.
into a lot of the best
Yeah.
and worst performances. We gotta one
Yeah,
at a
slow
time.
down. The
One
train's
at a
moving
time.
too fast.
Yeah. But I guess I will bring up one of mine first. I'll actually. This is a new addition for me because I forgot how Kyle Pitts, and I looked at his reps.
Oh,
Absolutely no effort by Kyle Pitts on those routes. And there was someone that they tweeted the video of him running his routes and all the targets he had. I believe he had 3 targets. Let me fact check that real quick. Yep, 3 targets. And there was like, what are you seeing? Like, what is similar with all of these targets? There's 2 things. One that I realized, and the other that I didn't. The other that I didn't was that there's just no effort when he's having no, jump in his break. Like he's not really jumping off the start, not trying to beat his man to his spot. So that's one, just pretty much low effort, which I'll give to another receiver here later in a little bit. But also, they are not designing plays to help him out. They were all across the middle. That it's not going to work for him. And it almost just feels like I don't want to give up faith on Kyle Pitts because I almost still believe that he can be great, but they just don't know how to use him. And I thought that was going to be different with Arthur Smith leaving, bringing in a new head coach. But I mean, this should be probably one of the most dynamic offenses in the league, and he's getting outperformed by Ray McLeod and Darnell Mooney.
don't sleep on Ray McLeod.
He's a return man.
He was a return man.
It's like if Cordero Patterson just started to go off again.
Okay. Well, I mean, they just have so many receiving threats. You have Bijan
still
in there too. I mean, some games they almost don't need Kyle Pitts to do anything, and they're just going to win. I mean, that's kind of
so. Then maybe they should just get rid of him and just have an average tight end because they obviously just don't need him.
Well, I'll have to go back and I'll rewatch this game.
Mm-hmm.
We'll look at some of the blocking snaps, see if he's good in that aspect. Because I think tight ends at this point, you don't really need tight ends in the receiving game. I think Kelsey is on the decline. He's kind of lost the love of the game. Maybe he's distracted. I think he might be helping Taylor Swift write another album or whatever. But it seems like he was kind of the last receiving tight end. I thought maybe Sam Laporta would be. Okay, hear me out. I thought Sam Laporta might be bringing it back. I thought, you know what? Brock Bowers maybe. But, I mean, Dallas Goedert is, leading the league this year in receiving.
Because he had that one big game.
Exactly. Because there's just nobody that's consistently catching. I wanted to bring up Mark Andrews, too. Okay. I've scored the same amount of fantasy points as Mark Andrews has in the last 2 weeks combined. He hasn't caught a single ball in 2 weeks.
Are we even going to talk about George Kittle?
No.
15 catches, 161 yards, 2 touchdowns through 3 weeks.
And again, we could see that game out of Nico Collins in 1 week. Okay. Travis Kelce was.
I think we're giving up on tight
end.
We think we're giving up on tight ends a little bit too much right now.
Well, I think we're moving more into a run game, running back focused league again. I think there's this cycle that we're doing, where passing was really high. We saw that during the Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers era.
Drew Brees.
I mean,
Eli Manning.
Yeah, all these quarterbacks were going off. The run game wasn't. I mean, there were really, really good running backs, but you had to be a Hall of Fame level running back to be good. And now we're kind of reverting to the point where it's the quarterbacks aren't throwing as much. I mean, we have to, that's just a thing. They just aren't throwing as much. And running backs are all doing a lot better. So a lot of these tight ends, a lot of the value is coming in the run game. They're blocking. They're playing decoys when they are running routes. I mean, it's just they're not as valuable in the passing game as they are in the running game.
You kind of opened my eyes here a little bit. Maybe I should look out for the tight ends more. I think they're still great receiving tight ends. I think you're kind of giving up on that part a little bit too much, but no, it definitely is changing a little bit because we did for a long time, or the last couple years at least, have that battle between 1A and 1B between George Kittle and Travis Kelsey, with some still solid tight ends in there. It's also week 4, so let's maybe wait. However, I do think Mark Andrews does need to kind of step it up, or they need to get him involved because I think he's a great weapon for them to use, and he just hasn't really been effective. Or I don't even know if he's really even been given the chance to be effective.
He's been really good. I mean, you look at him blocking. That's kind of the reason that Derrick Henry's getting 200 yards a game.
Yeah, and that should be taken into account. This is the first year with Derrick Henry, so his role probably looks a little bit different. And Isaiah Likely is still really good, although he's more of a just big receiver / tight end. He's kind of like Evan Ingram, Darren
Yeah.
Waller.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. Also, Patrick Ricard. He's I think a fullback, is he not?
300-pound fullback.
Yeah, 300-pound fullback. When you have him, Mark Andrews on the line, the holes they give the team.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just kind of what we're seeing.
But ending the Falcons Saints game, you have one of your best performances, who is actually the guy that got the game winner. I was very surprised was able to hit that.
Yeah, I mean, was that DeLong? Was that his 50?
I believe so.
Yeah, I mean, Young Wei Koo, he's turning into like a very solid player for them. I mean,
he's been a solid player.
He's been a solid player. I mean, at this point, yeah. I mean, I liked him 2 years ago, and here he is, still doing what he does best. Yeah, without him, I think they lose that game.
He has not missed a kick yet this year.
Mm-hmm.
9 for 9 on field goals, which is kind of crazy. 3 for 3 from 50-plus yards. And yeah, that was his career long, 58. Before that, his career long, actually kind of crazy. His career long was 54 before that. He had hit 54-yard field goals in 4 straight years.
Look at that.
Yeah.
And I mean, he's the reason they won that game, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Still kind of, though, you walk away from both these teams thinking, I don't know. Because, obviously they're both sitting at 2-2 now.
Mm-hmm.
I think both playing exciting matchups, and if they get wins to improve to 3-2, both be statement wins. The Falcons, who have to play not my Buccaneers, but Baker's Buccaneers on Thursday Night Football. I'm very excited to watch that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Saints obviously playing the Chiefs. So both those games are pretty big for them. And I know I said it and it sounds stupid, but like 3-2 looks way better than 2-3. But especially if you can get statement wins like that, Buccaneers, it would be a it'd be a divisional game, and then Saints, like you were saying, people were high on them. Now they're kind of on the downtrend. If they can get that win against the Chiefs, I know they're down their weapons, but that'd be crazy.
Yeah, I mean, the way they've been playing, I think I don't really see them pulling that out. But
no,
I guess we'll see.
But who knows?
Yeah, if Alvin Kamara can find the end zone 4 times, it seems to be like the one way they win games.
A couple guys that were finding the end zone a lot. Your next.
Yeah, I said the Chases in Cincinnati. Chase Brown and Jamar Chase.
Dude, if they didn't pull that win out, the Bengals over the Panthers, it was looking a little dicey there for a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Andy Dalton's still playing well.
Mm-hmm.
But again, like I said, there's this 2 to 3 game grace period that they always have. At some point, he'll revert. Yeah, I mean, it didn't really seem like that was a game they were going to lose. I don't know. It felt like it was
They jumped,
close. It was
yeah,
close at times.
they jumped on them early. They led 21-14 at halftime, and then going into the fourth quarter, then they led 31-21. So still, two scores. They both put up field goals in the fourth quarter. I thought just maybe um, that the Panthers might be able to put something together, but it became pretty clear that they're just not built for that. And yeah, Jamar Chase and Chase Brown both played really well. Chase Brown, probably a career game for him, honestly.
Yeah, 80 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, Jamar Chase had 85 in the air and 1 touchdown. He had that one really big touchdown catch. I think it was like a 60-yarder.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Burrow's starting to figure it out again, leading his team to a win. I mean, Chase Brown almost at 100 scrimmage yards. Although, I'll say 100. I mean, he's their main kick returner as well. So you add on his
all-purpose yards.
All-purpose yards. I mean, he had 150.
And I'm even more excited for the Bengals now. Obviously, they get their first win. It would have been kind of weird to see them also drop to 0-4 like the Jaguars because, again, like I still think Bengals are a good team. It's just weird that they start out this bad. But they do play the Ravens this upcoming Sunday. That is going to be – it's always a good one to watch. But, I mean, the Bengals, it just feels like they need this win. And this would be, again, one of those games this week where it would be a monumental win for them to really help turn around their season.
Yeah, they need something to prove that they can compete this year.
Little baby, something to prove.
Yes, yeah, they need little baby. But yeah, they just need to show some life. That's, I mean, we expect you to beat the Panthers. All right, you just need to show that you can beat a good team.
And on the Panthers front, nothing else to talk about them personally because we talk about relevant teams here.
Oh, wow.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think
you said it yourself. He's going on a Linsanity run, but that's about it.
Yeah, it's doing the old Josh Dobbs.
I guess we can hit my last 2 worst performances real quick.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
Sorry for whoever tuned into the Broncos-Jets game.
Breaking news: Jason Peters to sign with the Seahawks. 42-year-old offensive tackle. That's a guy that the Cowboys picked up a couple years ago when we were going through offensive line hell. He's still solid, but he is 42 years old, getting signed to the Seahawks.
He's still on his knees.
I know, right? But yeah. Just when you think things are going to be different for the New York Jets, Aaron Rodgers is back. Breece Hall is there. Alan Lazard's playing well. Garrett Wilson's playing well. Defense has been balling out.
Was Breece Hall there?
Just when you think things are turning around for the Jets, they lose 10-9 to the Broncos. Both teams miss field goals. The Broncos missed one to go up by 4, which, making a one-score game, but it's okay. And then the Jets go down. They even get an offensive holding call. Or no, not offensive holding, sorry. Defensive pass interference call on Riley Moss, who shout out Riley Moss from Ankeny, Iowa, went to Ankeny Centennial, and is a white cornerback in the league. They get a DPI call on him, and Greg Zuerlein misses a field goal to win the game. In a game where Bo Nix passed for 60 yards.
At half, he was 7 for 13 or 7 for 16 for -7 yards.
I think this might be the best box score I've ever seen So yeah, he was 12 for 25, 60 yards and a touchdown. Colt Cortland Sutton had 3 catches for 60 yards and a touchdown. So that means that not the other 9 completions by Bo Nix were negative yard plays.
They were
Or
for zero
ultimately
total. A net
for zero
zero.
total, ultimately amounting to zero total yards, excuse me, because he does have a catch by, a catch to Michael Burton for 3 yards, and then Javonte Williams caught 2 balls for 3 yards. But then Troy Franklin, who 2 catches for negative 2 yards, and then Tyler Batty, 2 catches for negative 4 yards, pretty much erasing that. One of my worst performances goes to Joe Lombardi, the offense coordinator for the Denver Broncos. I know it's in the rain. It's raining. You have a rookie quarterback, but you had a rookie quarterback that just looked really solid the week before, and now he comes in and it looks like you just took everything and threw it out the window.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about that game is Bo Nix has -7 passing yards at half, which is the most insane stat line we've ever seen. Aaron Rodgers ends the game with over 200 passing yards. They scored 9 points.
Yeah, they can't even score a touchdown. And part of that reason, in my opinion, is to Garrett Wilson, who ends up on my last worst performance, who got absolutely both shut down by Patrick Surtain the second, and also it just didn't even look like it. I don't. It feels weird to comment on someone's effort because I don't know. He's a professional athlete. He puts a ton of work into this. I get it, but when you look at the routes that he's running and when he gets a ball thrown his way, it one doesn't look like he's on the same page with Aaron Rodgers, a guy who they've had all offseason to work together. Really excited to actually finally have a quarterback after you've been a really solid receiver with terrible quarterbacks, and you just don't look like he's on the same page. And in a game like this, it just doesn't really look like, I don't know how much effort he's putting into these routes and trying to get open, trying to create separation. And you made a good point. While he's being covered by Patrick Surtain, the best wide receivers don't care about who they're matched up against.
Yeah, like Patrick Surtain is very, very good.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you kind of have to still play well. I mean,
right.
It's not like these great receivers in the league, it's not like they're just not playing against these top corners. They are. But they're able to still get catches here and there. I mean, you're averaging less than 10 yards a catch. I mean, that's kind of the big thing that's like, oh, this is probably why they're not getting into the end zone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, finished with 5 catches for 41 yards on 8 targets. A fine performance, but if you actually watch the game, it just doesn't. It's frustrating. And Matt Ryan said it after the game that someone asked, was like, in a log, after a performance like this, what are you saying to your receivers? And I was surprised to get this kind of reaction from Matt Ryan. He's like, I'm walking up to the receivers and I'm saying, you're going to get on my page. I'm not going to get on your page. You're getting on my page.
Mm-hmm.
It seems kind of like, all right, well, what the heck? But it makes sense, especially when you're Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah. And I think I feel like, we're dogging on Garrett Wilson here.
I'm dogging on him. I'll dog on him as much as I want.
Yeah. But the main issue with that offense this week was the run game. I mean, it was abysmal. Abysmal is an overstatement.
Even a guy like Braylon Allen, who everyone's been high on, 8 carries for 34 yards. Breece Hall, man.
Breece Hall got outrushed by Aaron Rodgers. A 64-year-old Aaron Rodgers. Like, come on. Just coming off.
It sucks to kind of keep trying to ride Breece because he was an Iowa Stater, but 10 carries for 4 yards.
Yeah, I mean, you have to do something better than that. That is on pace. That's a stat line on pace with Bo Nix at half.
It's true.
And not only that, he only caught 2 balls. So
yep.
He just didn't show up.
On 5 targets.
He's probably their best player, and he just wasn't wasn't there. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we saw Mike Williams lead the game, and he had the best performance of the day, which
Mm-hmm.
is just not what you want to see.
Right. Yeah, now the Jets, they will play. Yeah, the Vikings in that early Sunday game against the Vikings in London, and then they have to play the Bills at home, which you're probably gonna have to deal with a pissed off Josh Allen. So I don't think,
And the Bills kind of own the Jets at this point.
and I'm not confident enough to say that things have not changed that much for the Jets yet.
Yeah.
So that's it for my worst performances. You've got two quarterbacks, both guys. One of them also I'm very high on. The other one I am very nervous. I'm still continuing to be nervous if he is going to wreak havoc on my division for the next 10, 15 years.
Oh, I thought you were nervous about Baker Mayfield because I'm not nervous at all about Jaden Daniels, the
Oh,
best player in the league.
well, you're not nervous about him because he's not in your conference.
Well, Jaden Daniels, what can I say about him? My king. This must be what LeBron James fans feel.
What do you mean? This is
He's already
how
the
we feel.
GOAT.
This is how we feel. So Jaden Daniels, they absolutely boat race the Cardinals in
42
Arizona.
to 14 on the road.
Yeah. Jaden Daniels, 26 for 30. This guy is allergic to throwing incompletions. 233 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. And then I want to say he rushed into touchdown. Or no, he rushed in. Yeah, rushed in a touchdown. 8 carries for 47 yards. The Commanders now 3-1, Christian. 3-1.
And I said last week they can win the division. And you laughed in my face. And here they are.
I think it's just still that the Cowboys, it's the same thing with the Giants. We're just not nervous about the Commanders yet. Maybe we will be this year, but
maybe you should be. It's already been 3 games.
I think I am starting to get nervous.
Because the Eagles don't look competitive at this point at all.
Even though we'll still
Cowboys
probably
are 2-2.
Cowboys will
Giants
still probably
are terrible.
Cowboys will probably still drop one of those games against the Eagles, sadly.
Yeah. But I mean, the Commanders, their college offense looks like one of the best offenses in the league.
Mm-hmm. Cliff Kingsbury, man, I don't know what he did to maybe a head coaching job against Arizona, or not a head coaching job with Arizona a couple years ago was just too much, and he just should have honestly just stuck with the offense. Because if you remember, when he was the head coach, in those couple years where they had Kyler and D-Hop, the offense looked really solid.
He's really good at coaching these rushing quarterbacks. Because, I mean, Kyler Murray was in the MVP talks with Cliff Kingsbury at the helm.
Mm-hmm. And the Commanders ended up finishing with 216 rushing yards on 37 carries. That's 5.8 yards per carry, and had 4 rushing touchdowns with Jeremy McNichols punching in 2 scores.
Yeah, and don't let that fool you, because Brian Robinson is still probably making a case for one of the best. He's probably at this point like a top 5 running back.
He's been very good. Probably. He's 10th in rushing yards right now with 307.
With Jaden McDaniels back there. How many touchdowns?
3.
Okay. Maybe that's recency bias for me, but it's also kind of a crazy year for running backs.
And it's also kind of crazy how, and I know they have Terry McLaurin and an older Zach Ertz, but Jaden Daniels is making work with this receiver room with, hopefully I can say this right, Olamide Zaccheaus. I believe that's how you say his first name.
Really?
Olamide?
Doesn't sound like a first name.
Well, Zaccheaus, I know is right. I've heard that before. Finishes with 6 receptions for 85 yards. Cardinals to be honest with you, they got behind early. They couldn't match it. At one point, going into halftime, they were down 17-7. Couldn't get anything going. Yeah, I don't think the Cardinals are a bad team. I think their defense is probably bottom half of the league, but their offense can get stuff going when they need to. This was just not the game for the Cardinals.
It kind of felt like a weird one where, I mean, the running backs, the rushing game worked. James Conner had a really good game. Um, Marvin Harrison honestly had a good game in the air. They just didn't pass the ball enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I kind of want to see the time of possession on this game.
Cardinals 26 minutes, Commanders 33 minutes.
It just didn't feel like the Cardinals. I don't know. How many drives did each team have?
Oh gosh, 9.
Both.
Mm-hmm. It really
I just don't know what the issue is with the Cardinals then.
it is a kind of a head scratcher game. It really, I think, is just not doing enough between not doing enough between the 20s and not getting into the red zone enough.
Yeah, like they bit off a lot of the field. It's just they didn't do that consistently on more than 2 drives.
Kyler 16 for 22, 142 yards and a touchdown. James Conner 18 carries for 104 yards and a touchdown. Yeah, I agree. Just not really able to get into the red zone, and it really just looked like the Commanders had some confidence and they just really ran away with that one.
Oh yeah. It's kind of a similar situation to how the Bucks ran away against the Eagles.
And first off, before we move to that, Commanders will be playing. I just had it. The Cardinals are going to be playing the Packers this upcoming week. I think that'll be a good game. Commanders play the Browns for their annual spanking because it seems like the Browns usually always lose to the Commanders.
It's a bad time to be a Browns fan.
It really is. We're not even going to talk about that game because that was one of those like nothing games, honestly.
Yeah, no. That was just another game where Deshaun Watson just cannot lead the team to a win.
Yep. But his predecessor can. Or not predecessor. Would it be predecessor?
I don't know.
Well, the man that should still be there, but I'm glad he isn't, Baker Mayfield, my guy, balled out again.
Oh, Baker.
He did it for the city of Tampa. They needed it. The state of Florida needed it with the hurricane. He said, "Here's your savior. It's me."
Okay.
3 total touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown.
Powerful run.
Yeah, ran over probably. I think it was Blankenship. Really accurate. I think he started the game maybe like, I want to say it was around like 13 for 14, somewhere around there. He was finding Mike Evans. He was finding Chris Godwin. Yeah, and it was against the Eagles, who is continuing their downfall.
Yeah, the Eagles just didn't really look good. I mean, no. Jalen Hurts seems to be like a problem at this point.
I get that they were down A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith. I totally get that. But we forget that this was also a Bucs team that just lost to the Broncos last week. And the Eagles have a better defense than the Broncos. And they can't get anything down. And I still question the Eagles secondary, who just seems like all they do is just talk shit with C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Darius Slay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Darius Slay did have 7 tackles, but
also was part of a secondary that gave up, 300 passing yards?
Almost 350. Yeah. I mean, no receivers, it's kind of tough.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, good quarterbacks, I'll probably say this a lot more, but good quarterbacks can win without talented players. I mean, Patrick Mahomes has been winning without them. Aaron Rodgers has been doing it his whole career. I mean, you should be able to piece together more than 158 yards in the air.
Also, just weren't really able to get Saquon involved, if I remember right. I didn't feel like his name was
called. He didn't have a bad game. He seemed like they didn't want to lean on the run. I mean, you get down big, and it's kind of tough to.
Mhm.
But I mean, he's averaging over 8 yards a carry. You only hand the ball off to him 10 times.
Yeah,
You only
that
throw to him 2 times.
yeah, it's true. I want to say that the Bucks scored on their first three. They scored touchdowns on three of their first four drives, and then they scored points on four of their first five drives. So
Yeah.
the Eagles were quickly down 24-0. Can't really run the ball a lot, but it just never really seemed like they were even trying to get Saquon involved
And I
that
think
much.
I think it's a coaching issue because
Mm-hmm.
I think he thinks you have 2 whole quarters of play. Saquon was really the only player that was playing well,
Mm-hmm.
and they just don't let him get any touches. It's like immediately they're like, "Oh, we need to get all of these points back right away. We need to go to the air. We need to force these throws.
Mm-hmm.
We need to create plays that aren't here." And no, that's Saquon is doing fine on the ground. Get your offense moving the way it should. Once you get a snowball effect,
Mm-hmm.
then you'll be cutting the lead. You can trust the passing game more, but
Yeah, because the
why
Bucks.
lean on the passing game when you have no receivers?
Yeah, because the Bucks really. I mean, they slowed down afterwards. They scored 9 points in the second half. I don't think any touchdown or Bucky Irving got the touchdown. Excuse me, which he's been looking great.
Yeah.
But outside of that, just and that two of the Eagles' points, it really should have been 34-14, but the Eagles blocked an extra point and took it back for two. So
It's true. Although it didn't matter.
no, it didn't matter. But people thought that might have been the turning point with 6 minutes left, and they were only down by 2 touchdowns at that point. But they just can't get, and that proves your point right. You have so much time. If you have a whole quarter and a half left of football, you're only down 2 touchdowns. In the National Football League, very erasable. So
Mm-hmm. They just didn't have a good game plan going in. They were like, it seemed like they went in with their normal or like a game plan of like, we want to throw the ball a lot.
mm-hmm.
And then they're going to whine and complain that they don't have receivers. Well, I mean, you knew you didn't have receivers.
Right.
Why did you game plan like you did? Right? You can't complain about it afterwards. Come on.
Yeah, and we'll see if they're back. They will be playing the Browns. They after this bye week, we'll see if you hope at least one of either AJ Brown or Devonta Smith is back. As a Cowboys fan, I hope that they are not back. But regardless, still confidence in the Cowboys. Delusionally that they'll just beat the Eagles, regardless. But yeah, they'll be playing the Browns in 2 weeks, technically, and Baker will be playing the Falcons on Thursday Night Football. As we mentioned, really just an MVP race between Baker and Sam Darnold now.
Yeah. Although I think Sam Darnold has cleared Baker, but
we don't know. We'll have to see. If it's honestly, if I would have to bet on who can keep their pace up, it would probably be Sam Darnold, because Baker will have his games sooner rather than later. Love the guy, but I know him.
yeah.
Especially with having to play some tough teams coming up here.
Yeah, and it seems like at this point, I don't think Sam Darnold's going to revert to his old self.
Yeah, they just got to keep winning, which I think they will.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, right now, it might be between the Vikings, and I know it's easy to say this because they're the unbeatens, but I think it's between the Vikings and the Chiefs for who is the best team. And I know, the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, best quarterback in the league, but Vikings might be edging out the Chiefs for the best defense in the league. And I hope we get to – I don't think they'll play each other in the regular season. Let me fact check that. But Vikings-Chiefs Super Bowl? Who knows?
Don't say that.
Why? That would be electric.
Vikings fans know, don't get your hopes too high.
That's true. They do not play the Chiefs this year.
But I think the NFL script writers are cooking this year. I think they really want this three-peat. to happen, and that's kind of what it's looking like.
Well, I guess we'll just have to see.
Yeah.
Thanks again, guys, for joining us on another episode of Trench Talk. Really appreciate it. Tuesday edition. Let's see here. Probably won't be back this week. Probably not. We don't really need to do an episode entirely just previewing Thursday Night Football unless we have some insane news drop. Maybe we could do a quick one Thursday morning, but we'll just have to see. It's kind of hard on these when there's no football to talk about. Friday, I will be driving back to Ames, so unless I want to do trench talk from the car, but it's probably not a good idea. But we'll see. Maybe something quick on Thursday. If not, we'll probably see you guys Monday or Tuesday to recap some football. And yeah, thanks again for joining us, and we will see you guys on next time.